Hey guys, tonight's story begins with damp moss clinging to your skin, like it knows you better than your family ever did. A forest that smells like someone buried a blacksmith shop under the roots, and a silence so heavy you start apologizing to your own footsteps. You wake barefoot, teeth chattering, staring at a sky that can't decide if it's evening or the end of the world. No sun, no road, no map, just the sudden, very real sound of dogs practicing how to tear something apart. And congratulations, that something is you. So before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. And if you'd like to keep me caffeinated enough to outrun spectral hounds, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link pinned in the comments, because apparently dark folklore doesn't run on chamomile tea. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You've just woken up in a medieval forest, cold, confused, and barefoot. You don't remember falling asleep, and yet the damp soil beneath you is already pressed flat, like you've been lying there for hours. The moss clings to your skin with a kind of familiarity that's unnerving. Somewhere, an owl hoots, but it doesn't sound right. Too low, too slow, like it's imitating a sound it only half understands. The sky overhead is caught in that strange pre-night glow, only this time it feels wrong. It's too dark for sunset, yet not quite night. The clouds are purple, not from the fading sun, but from something heavier, thicker, like ink bleeding through parchment. The air smells of pine needles and old blood, sharp and metallic, like someone had buried iron under the roots, and the forest is trying to forget. You sit up, your spine crackling like dry sticks. Your breath fogs the air, though you don't feel cold until you move. Then it hits, the kind of cold that doesn't just touch skin. It seeps into the bones, into your teeth, into whatever part of you still believes this might be a dream. Your feet sting as they meet the ground, bare and bruised, mottled with mud and the beginnings of frostbite. The leaves are slick, too slick, like something passed over them recently and left a film behind. There are no paths here, no signs, just trees, tall and ancient. The kind that remember when men still lit torches to keep shadows at bay. These trees don't whisper in the wind. They murmur even when there isn't any. And you start to realize the wind isn't coming from above. It's coming from the ground, from somewhere just beneath the surface, carrying with it a scent that is not entirely natural. It smells like turned soil and wet fur, like rainwater that's run through a battlefield. You try to orient yourself, but there's no sun to guide you, no birdsong to comfort you. Even the insects are silent. Just your own breathing and the crack of bark flexing somewhere too close for comfort. You call out, instinctively, hoping for a name, a voice, anything, but your words hit the air and vanish, like sound itself is reluctant to linger. What answers is not human, not even close. It's the distant thunder of hooves. The first time you hear them, you freeze. Not because you're sure of what it is, but because you're not. The ground doesn't shake, not yet. But the rhythm is there, faint but steady, like drums being played far beneath the earth. You hold your breath, straining to listen, and then you hear something else. Dogs. No, hounds. Dozens of them, howling in broken intervals, like they're not barking at anything in particular, but simply practicing the sound of terror. You take a step back, then another. A branch snaps behind you, not beneath your foot, but someone else's, someone close. You spin, but there's no one there. Just trees and fog, and the sinking feeling that the forest is watching you with eyes it hasn't grown yet. Locals, if there are any, would tell you to run, or maybe to kneel, to close your eyes and pretend you're dead. They'd whisper the name you've now stepped into like a puddle you didn't see. The Wild Hunt. Part ghost story, part nightmare, part divine punishment for sins you don't remember committing. The stories never agree on what it is. Some say it's a procession of the damned, cursed souls who gallop through the sky on skeletal horses, dragging behind them the screams of the unrepentant. Others say it's the gods themselves, riding through the mortal realm to claim what belongs to them: flesh, souls, memories. And some, the ones who still won't leave their homes after dark, say the hunt is none of these things, that it's older than gods, older than stories, that it isn't hunting anything. It's collecting. You don't believe in folklore. Or at least, you didn't yesterday, whenever yesterday was. But belief has a way of shifting when your teeth chatter and the moon won't rise. When the wind begins to carry whispers that know your name, you start walking, not toward anything, just away. But away from what? The hunt is not bound by place. It doesn't follow roads. It makes them. There's movement between the trees now. Not clear shapes. Just suggestion. A flash of fur. The glint of something metallic. Antlers, maybe. Or blades. You blink, and it's gone. But your heartbeat won't settle. The hooves are louder now. Closer. You think of turning back, but there's nowhere to return to. The forest has changed. What was once a tree is now a shadow. What was once a clearing is now a trap. And the worst part? You've stopped hearing the dogs. Silence, in a place like this, is not a gift. It's a warning, the kind that comes just before the lightning. You crouch behind a boulder, breath shallow, eyes wide. You don't know what you're waiting for, but you know when it's arrived. The fog moves, not drifts, not swirls, moves, like it's alive, like it's parting for something, and then you hear it. The horn, not a sound exactly, but an absence of one. It sucks the noise out of the forest, like a scream turned inside out. The birds, the wind, even the rustle of leaves goes dead. Your ears ring with the void, and you know with the kind of knowing that doesn't require thought, that you've been marked. They've seen you. The hunt doesn't care if you believe. It doesn't care if you're good, or sorry, or lost. It doesn't ask why you wandered into its territory. It just runs and takes. You press yourself to the rock, praying it won't be enough to hide you. But it's too late. You feel it, crawling up your spine. That heavy, ancient weight of attention. The kind that predators have. The kind that gods have. The kind that doesn't blink. The sky above you isn't sky anymore. It's just darkness, pulsing like a wound. The trees are bending, not from wind, but to make way. And in that final breath before the thunder truly starts, you realize something terrible. You didn't wake up in this forest. You were delivered. The forest doesn't welcome you. It doesn't whisper your name in soft breezes or guide you with sun-dappled paths. It waits, watches, and reminds you, with every squelching step and crooked branch, that you don't belong here. This isn't a fairy tale forest filled with singing birds and mischievous foxes. There are no talking animals, no glowing trails of mushrooms, no kindly trees offering wisdom and direction. Medieval forests weren't enchanted, they were uncharted. You didn't enter them to explore. You entered them because you were desperate, foolish, or running from something worse than the things you might find inside. And once you crossed the tree line, you stopped being a traveler. You became prey. There are no paths here, only suggestions of where something once walked. Maybe a deer, maybe a man, maybe something that walked on two legs but wasn't quite either. The moss muffles your footsteps, but not well enough. Every twig you snap, every leaf you crush underfoot feels like a warning bell. Sound travels strangely here. You think you hear movement to your left, but when you turn, it's behind you. Then it's above. Then it's nowhere at all. You try to tell yourself it's the wind, but the wind doesn't make footsteps, and it certainly doesn't breathe. Everything in this forest is older than you, older than your country, older than language. Trees lean in as if conferring secrets to one another, and their bark peels like skin in the process of becoming something else. You catch sight of markings carved deep into the trunk of an ancient oak, symbols not made by any hand that knew Latin or reason. They don't look decorative. They look like warnings, or wards, or apologies. You step past them anyway, because you have no choice. You tell yourself this is just a forest, just trees, just nature. But you're lying. Wolves live here, real ones. Not the polished predators of modern conservation documentaries, but bone-hungry ghosts with yellow eyes and ribs sharp enough to slice through frost. You won't see them, unless they want you to. You'll hear them, though. The crack of brush, the thud of paws too heavy to be chasing rabbits, the low huff of breath held just long enough to get closer. And then nothing, because they're waiting, watching, judging whether you're worth the trouble of tearing open. You smell like fear and softness, the kind of meat that never had to fight for its place in the food chain. They'll remember that smell. And then there are the men, or rather, the ones who used to be men, bandits, outlaws, deserters. The forest doesn't turn them into monsters. It just removes the last bits of civilization that pretended they weren't. They don't speak in full sentences anymore, just gestures and snarls and knife blades sharpened with stone. If they see you, they won't ask questions. They'll assume you have food, or valuables, or time, and they'll take all three, slowly if they're feeling merciful, quicker if they're bored. You're not in a world with police or search parties or emergency services. If you scream, the only answer you'll get is an echo and maybe a distant chuckle that doesn't belong to anything human. The forest is damp, even when it hasn't rained. Wet in that way that feels ancient, like water left behind from the last flood the world barely survived. Your clothes cling to you, wool heavy and sour with sweat and mildew. You're starting to itch, not from bugs, although there are plenty of those, biting things that leave welts and burrow into skin with no apology, but from the creeping realization that the forest is inside you now, in your lungs, under your fingernails, threaded into your hair. You could leave if you knew where the edge was, but the forest isn't a place you map. It shifts behind you. It loops in on itself. You swear you've passed that same twisted birch tree 3 times, but now it has different scars on the bark. The light is strange here. Not quite dark, but never really bright. Even at midday, the sun filters through like it's asking permission. Shadows bend in ways they shouldn't. Some are too long. Some aren't connected to anything. You stop trusting the movement at the edge of your vision, because every time you look, it's just more trees. But when you close your eyes, you feel it, like breath on the back of your neck, like eyes, watching, not cruel exactly, just waiting. You try not to think about demons. That's superstition, you say, old stories told to scare children and fill the silence between harvests. But the stories came from somewhere, from travelers who came back with eyes too wide and mouths that whispered prayers in languages they never knew before. From peasants who spoke of black figures that stood just beyond the torchlight and vanished when you tried to look. From bones found stacked in hollow trees. From nights where the wind carried screams too long to be human and too broken to be beasts. You stumble over a root and catch yourself on a tree trunk. It groans beneath your hand, not creaks, groans, like it resents your touch. The bark is slick. You pull your hand back and see something dark on your palm. Not sap, not blood, something in between. The tree doesn't care. It just leans a little closer. This place doesn't operate by your rules, the rules you've lived by. Gravity, time, language start to feel more like suggestions. You think you're walking in a straight line, but your footprints loop behind you. You think you've been walking for minutes, but the sun's gone down again. Or maybe it never rose. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, not just for food, but for anything that makes sense. A sound you recognize, a face, a voice, something to remind you you're still real, but nothing comes. And maybe the worst part is that you start to understand, not with your brain, but with something older, some ancient part of your body that once lived in caves and flinched at firelight and knew the forest wasn't beautiful. It was punishment. It was exile. It was death stretched over weeks, disguised as moss and leaves and silence. You've stepped into a space where rules end and legends begin. And the thing about legends is they don't need you to believe in them. They just need you to stay long enough to become one. The fog doesn't move like fog should. It doesn't drift or rise or settle. It coils, thick and low. It hugs the ground with purpose, rolling over your ankles like it's checking to see if you'll flinch. You can't see more than a few steps in any direction. The trees have faded into suggestion, their trunks reduced to pale columns that vanish at the edges of your sight, like scenery waiting to be painted in. You try to convince yourself this is just weather, some damp trick of temperature and timing, but that story stops working the moment you hear it. Not loud, not yet, just a suggestion, a pulse, something distant, muffled by mist and moss, and the terrible thickness of the air. You hold your breath, listening. You think maybe it's thunder. Maybe a storm is coming. That would be reasonable. But then it changes. It finds rhythm. It becomes hoofbeats. They're not galloping yet. Not the frenzied pace of flight. Not the wild chase of myth. Just the steady, inevitable cadence of riders who already know where you are and don't need to hurry. You tell yourself it could be anything. Stalking elk, some lost horse from a village. But then it multiplies. One beat becomes 3, 5, 10, too many. The sound echoes strangely, like it's bouncing off the inside of your skull rather than the trees. You move without thinking, stepping sideways through the fog, hoping to find a hill or a ditch or some crumbling ruin to hide in. There's nothing. Just more damp earth, and the deep, slow ache of old footsteps rotting into the ground. Then comes the howling. It doesn't rise like a dog's cry. It arrives, all at once. Dozens of voices layered over each other. Canine, human, something in between. Not in harmony, not in competition, but in perfect, violent confusion. The sound tears through the fog like claws. You don't know if it's ahead of you, or behind you, or overhead. The sound doesn't care about direction. It doesn't care about your ears. It cares about your bones, and the way they might rattle if shaken just right. Your instincts kick in. Not the modern kind. The primal ones. The ones buried under centuries of civilization and false security. You crouch low, trying to make yourself smaller, quieter, invisible. But the fog moves with you. It doesn't break. It presses in. You've never known silence to be so loud. Every breath is a betrayal. Every heartbeat is a shout. And then, as if summoned by your fear alone, you hear something new. Your name, not clearly, not loudly, but it's there. Tucked into the folds of the wind, like a secret too dangerous to say outright. It doesn't come from one direction. It comes from all of them. It's not a question or a plea. It's a statement, a knowing, a claim. You don't want to believe it, but your name doesn't sound right when they say it. It's been turned, twisted, given weight. You feel it settle onto your shoulders like a collar. The fog thickens. The hoofbeats quicken. You start to move, half blind, pushing through saplings and cold vines and branches that bend too easily, like they want you to pass. The howling rises behind you again, closer now, and layered beneath it is laughter, not the kind that comes from joy, the kind that happens when pain becomes entertainment. You slip on wet roots, catch yourself on a trunk slick with some kind of growth that smells faintly of rot. You want to scream, but you know better. Sound draws them. Sound is theirs. The wild hunt doesn't sneak. It announces itself. not with warning, but with inevitability. In the medieval mind, sound wasn't just sensation, it was message. A thunderclap foretold divine wrath. A baby's cry in the wrong hour meant death. A dog howling at the wrong moon was a sign the veil was thin, sound meant. And this sound, this rising orchestra of galloping hooves, tearing howls, and your name spoken like a curse, means run. You try to tell your legs to go faster, but the air is thick, not just with moisture, but with presence. It's like walking through breath. The forest isn't just full, it's crowded. You stumble again, this time scraping your hand on something that isn't bark, something smooth and polished and wet. You don't look to see what it is. You don't want to know what part of the hunt came before you. The horn comes next. You don't hear it so much as feel it. A pressure in your gut, a shift in the atmosphere, like the air itself is being sucked into a different world. It's a sound that removes other sounds. Birds fall silent. The wind stops. Even the howls pause, just for a second. And in that vacuum, in that impossible hush, you understand something you couldn't before. You're not being chased. You're being hunted. There's a difference. Chase implies escape. Hunt means conclusion. You're not the one who gets away. You're the one who was always meant to be caught. You're the reason the hunt rides tonight. Not by name, not by fate, but by proximity. You were here. That's all it takes. A shadow passes through the fog ahead. Tall, on horseback, but wrong. The rider is too still, the horse too quiet. No breathing, no snorting, no clatter, just glide. The fog parts for them but clings to you. Another figure joins it, then another. The shapes are grotesque in their elegance. Long limbs, heads cocked at unnatural angles, some wearing crowns of bone or antler. Their eyes glow with a color you can't name, something between fire and memory. You back away, but your foot finds a hole. You fall hard. The fog doesn't cushion your fall. It opens just enough to show you the ground, wet, red, churned up by hooves. You try to scramble, but something brushes your leg. A hand, a paw. You don't know. You don't want to know. You run again, not toward anything, but away from the sound. Because that's all you can do now. Keep moving. Keep breathing. Keep praying to gods that don't belong to this place. The sound behind you grows, layered and endless. Not just hoofbeats and howls now, but screaming. Words in languages that never had alphabets. Laughter made from ruin. The hiss of metal. The hiss of breath that shouldn't be warm. And your name, over and over, pronounced differently each time. You want to believe this is a dream, a fever, some medieval hallucination born of bad bread and worse water. But there's no waking, no shift, just sound. Sound that peels you open, that names you, that follows you into every corner of the fog. And as you run, heart breaking, lungs burning, you finally understand why no one ever escapes the hunt. Because it never needed to find you. It only needed you to listen. There's a strange weight to being hunted by something older than your ancestors' fear. You feel it in your teeth, in the parts of your mind that language hasn't reached yet. It's not just danger. It's something fundamentally wrong with the air, the time, the shape of the world around you. The hunt isn't one thing. It's legion. It doesn't obey geography or theology or memory. It wears 100 faces, and none of them are yours. But every version shares the same spine, riders from the beyond, pouring through the cracks of night to claim the living. Who they are depends on who you ask. In the frozen north, they say Odin leads the charge, one-eyed and war-hungry, with ravens circling above and wolves snarling at his heels. He rides a horse with too many legs, each hoofall tearing the sky a little thinner. The Norse knew the hunt as the noise behind the storm, the screaming wind that knocked trees flat and drove men mad. But they didn't curse it. They feared it like they feared the gods, not for cruelty, but for inevitability. To the old Christians, it was the devil himself at the helm, hooves blazing and eyes like hot coals buried in ash. He didn't just come for souls. He came for the half-dead, the ones who straddled sin and salvation, dragging them behind his procession until their bodies broke from exhaustion. You didn't survive the hunt. You joined it, howling, galloping, tearing through night after night, until you forgot there was ever a world where the sun rose. Others spoke of Arthur, not as a king, but as a revenant, a once noble figure corrupted by time, riding with a blade rusted by centuries of grief, his knights now twisted parodies in shattered armor. They didn't speak, not with voices, only with horns and steel and the thunder of punishment long delayed. The hunt was justice, they said, for those who escaped it in life, and some, the ones who feared the woods most, whispered of a queen with antlers made of fire and eyes like polished bone. She didn't ride a horse, she became the horse, the dogs, the storm. She was the hunt, embodied, a godless goddess who danced through the trees and tore the breath from sleeping children. Her riders didn't carry weapons, they just pointed, and that was enough. None of these stories agree on who leads, but they all agree on who is taken. They ride at night. That's the first rule. Daylight keeps the veil tight, the cracks sealed. But once the sun dips low and the shadows stretch long, the hunt begins. You don't see them at first. You hear them, echoes of hoofbeats too far to be real, dogs baying in a rhythm that doesn't match any heartbeat you've ever known. Then the fog rolls in, the unnatural kind, thick as wool, cold as confession, moving like it remembers every sin you've ever buried. They hate the living. That's the second rule. Not in the way a beast hates prey, not in the way men hate enemies. It's deeper, purer, the way fire hates ice, the way silence hates song. The living are warm and loud and unfinished. The hunt is not. They are cold and endless and complete. Your breath offends them. Your heartbeat taunts them. You exist in a way they no longer can. And that's enough. They don't speak. They declare. With the sound of horns that split the soul. With the shriek of metal not forged by human hands. With the endless scream of creatures that might have once been men. You'll see them riding between trees that shouldn't fit horses, across rivers that don't ripple, through rocks that don't yield. They don't need roads. Roads are for the living. They ride through memory, through nightmare, through guilt, and they always take someone. It doesn't matter who. Sinner or saint, soldier or child, believer or skeptic. If you're there, and they ride, and you breathe when they pass, then your name is written. Not on parchment or stone, but on the breath of the wind that follows them. You won't see it coming. You'll feel it. Cold fingers on the nape of your neck, the sudden weightlessness of your soul deciding whether to stay or flee. Sometimes, the taken vanish without a sound, just gone, like they never existed. Other times, they scream for days, voices echoing long after the hunt has passed. And sometimes, rarely, they come back, but they don't return whole. They don't sleep anymore. They flinch at thunder. They wake up weeping, unable to say why. Their eyes are always looking somewhere just past you, like they're watching for the horizon to tear open again. No one survives the hunt unchanged. You either vanish or you rot inside your skin, walking, talking, pretending. But part of you is already galloping, caught in that eternal procession. Hooves pounding, dogs snarling, horns screaming. Some say this is how the hunt grows, by those it doesn't quite kill, by those it breaks. You wonder now if your name is already on the wind, if the queen or the king or the god or the devil has turned their head toward you, if one of the hounds has tasted your scent, if the fog creeping through the underbrush is only pretending to be weather. You can feel it, how the air has shifted, how time stutters in this place, how every sound bends around something enormous you cannot see, and you understand that it doesn't matter which story is true, Odin or Lucifer, Arthur or the bone-eyed queen. The hunt is real, and it has 1,000 names because it doesn't need just one. It isn't one thing. It's the space between sleep and waking, between forest and road, between heartbeat and silence. It is the consequence of being alive in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you are here. You are alive, and night is falling. You weren't born into this world, but somehow you've wandered into its rules. And the rules are old, older than the language you think in, older than books, older than God. You can't read them, but they're written everywhere, carved into bark, etched into bone, whispered in the way a child steps over a threshold without touching the doorframe. You think you're lost in the woods, but the woods know exactly where you are. What you don't know is how many signs you've already ignored. The first was the crows. They came in threes, spiraling overhead in tight, deliberate circles. You thought it was coincidence, just birds being birds. But the people here don't think that way. Crows don't gather for fun, they gather for consequence. 3 is a warning, not a threat, not yet, just the universe clearing its throat. You should have turned around. The second was the dog, not a snarling beast or some monster lunging out from under the trees, but a mutt with grayed fur and cracked paws, sitting at the edge of the road, whining low and constant, not looking at you, looking past you, watching something that wasn't there. When you passed, it backed away like you stank of wrongness. You tried to speak softly, to extend a hand, but it just whined louder, eyes still fixed on the space behind your shoulder. You walked on. The dog did not follow. That was the second warning. You were still alive, but the forest had started speaking your name. Then the reflection. You found a puddle. Not unusual, given the rot and the rain, and the way this place refuses to dry. You glanced in, out of habit more than need, but your reflection blinked before you did. It's subtle, the kind of thing you dismiss, a trick of light, a delay in the brain, but deep down, you know better. There are rules to reflections. They are supposed to mimic, not predict. When they stop copying you and start watching, it's already too late. You tried to find answers. You made your way to the edge of a village, the kind that doesn't appear on maps, with roofs sagging under the weight of stories no one dares to tell out loud. The people watched you, like you were already a ghost. Children pulled indoors without a word. Old men stared into their cups and didn't blink, and the wise woman, if that's what she was, turned her face away before you could speak, not in anger, in mourning, like someone closing their eyes during a funeral procession they can't afford to attend. You said nothing. She said less. That's not a good sign. There were others. So many small things that wouldn't mean anything to someone who didn't grow up under this sky. The way the wind changed direction without shifting the leaves, the sudden stillness of the birds, the bread that refused to rise, the milk that soured only in your cup. All of them small omens. But here, small doesn't mean safe. It means creeping. It means quiet confirmation. The signs don't shout. They pile up until they become weight. And you're heavy now. You didn't notice how your shadow started lagging behind. Just a fraction. Just enough. You didn't notice the scent of ash that lingered in your clothes, though no fires burned nearby. You didn't notice the way your name started to sound different when spoken aloud. Harder, sharper, like the vowels had been touched by frost. You didn't notice, but everything else did. The world here is porous. It leaks. It doesn't separate cleanly between myth and moment. And the hunt feeds on the leak. It slips through cracks made by disbelief and arrogance. You walked into this story with modern bones and rational blood. But this land doesn't need you to believe. It only needs you to breathe. The signs aren't meant to help you escape. They're meant to warn you just long enough that you know it's coming. The hunt doesn't take the unaware. It takes the seen. It takes the marked. The signs don't offer salvation. They offer recognition. A quiet nod from the universe that you've been chosen. Not for greatness, not for redemption, but for removal. You think back to the villagers, how they didn't lock their doors, didn't whisper prayers, didn't burn sage when you passed. They didn't need to, because the curse wasn't loose. It had already found you. You weren't a threat to them. You were a symptom, and symptoms are watched, not treated. No one offers medicine to the dead. Even the woods have changed. You don't remember taking a turn, but the trees are different now. Taller, older, too close together. The path is gone, not overgrown, gone. And the fog is back. It smells like wet stone and bone marrow and something older than fire. You can't tell if it's dusk or dawn. Time isn't keeping track of you anymore. Something cracks in the distance. Not a branch, not thunder, something else. The kind of sound that splits silence into shrapnel. The kind of sound that means the hunt is closer than you'd like to admit. You start to walk faster, then faster still, but your footsteps don't sound like your own. There's an echo, but it doesn't match your pace. It's ahead of you, or behind, or beside. You try to tell yourself it's paranoia, but you've seen the signs. You've seen the birds circling, the dogs crying, the way water mimicked your shape wrong. You've felt the absence of welcome, the silence that folds inward around your breath. You've smelled the sulfur when no flame burned. You've watched the moon rise too fast and fall too slow. You've been warned in every language this place knows. And still, you're here, still breathing, still listening, still waiting for the final sign. The one that doesn't come with birds or fog or strange reflections. The one that comes with horns. The roofs lean inward, as if the buildings are whispering secrets to each other, secrets they don't want you to hear. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, but no one is outside. No carts creak down the muddy path. No blacksmith hammer. No laughter. No children. Not even chickens scurrying underfoot. Just quiet. Thick. Deliberate quiet. The kind that fills your ears like water. The kind that suggests silence isn't absence, but warning. You step forward slowly, not sure if your presence is invitation or intrusion. The mud grips your boots like it wants you to stay. You knock on the first door you find. Nothing. No shuffle of feet. No whispered exchange behind the wood. You knock again. Louder. The door doesn't move. But above it, the shutter swings slightly, just enough to suggest a pair of eyes might be watching. You can't see them, but you feel them. Measuring you, deciding. A breeze stirs the smoke, carrying with it the faint scent of burning pine and something darker underneath. Tallow, maybe, or dried blood. You step away from the door and walk deeper into the village. The houses are tight together, as if built for warmth, for protection, for hiding. Some have herbs strung over the door frames. Others have markings carved into the wood. Circles, slashes, symbols you don't recognize but which feel religious in a way that has nothing to do with churches. They are prayers, maybe, or wards, or warnings. No one greets you. No one tells you to leave. They don't need to. The silence speaks for them. You catch a glimpse of movement. Just a flicker. A girl, maybe 10, ducking away from a window. Behind her, the room was candlelit, warm, alive. But when you move toward it, the light vanishes. The shutter slams closed. Not with fear, with finality. Like they've made this decision before. Like they know what you are. You're not cursed. Not yet. But you're close. Marked. In a way they don't need to explain. You carry the scent of the hunt now. Like smoke in your clothes. You were in the forest. You heard the fog speak. You saw the birds. The signs. And now you've come here. trailing that scent into their streets like blood in the snow. You knock again. Different door this time. An old man answers. Or maybe he just forgot to bolt the latch. The door opens a crack, just enough for you to see a single eye, pale and rimmed with red. He doesn't ask who you are. He already knows enough. Leave. That's all he says. Not cruel. Not angry. Just resigned. You stammer something about help, about needing shelter, about the woods and the fog and the sound you heard last night. He closes the door before you finish the sentence. There's a sound now, soft and rhythmic. Not the hunt. Not yet. A broom sweeping across stone. You follow it and find a woman brushing her doorstep in tight, circular strokes. She doesn't look up, doesn't acknowledge you. Her face is set like stone, her eyes dull. But she sweeps with purpose, with ritual, like the act itself holds power. You speak to her. She keeps sweeping. She's not cleaning, she's protecting. You start to realize how strange it is that everything here still functions. The smoke, the fire, the faint smell of stew from somewhere unseen. These people are not starving. They are not dying. They're waiting and surviving by refusing, by keeping you on the other side of their doors, their eyes, their names. You try one more time. A tavern, or what used to be one. Its sign hangs crooked, faded by rain and years. You push the door and it creaks open. No one is inside, but mugs sit on the counter. A candle still burns. A hearth glows low. Someone was here, might still be. You step inside, and the candle dies, not flickers. Dies. Smoke curls upward from the wick. The hearth lets out a sigh, as if exhaling the last bit of warmth it dared to hold. The room feels colder now. Not because of the weather, because of you. Because you stepped where you don't belong. You are not welcome. More than that, you are known. The hunt is not just a story here. It is a cycle, a season, a punishment. It comes when the signs align, when the birds circle, when the air turns inside out. The villagers do not fight it. They endure it, and they do not interfere. To help you is to invite notice, and they've buried enough bones under these houses to know better. You are not the first outsider. They don't build walls here. Don't sharpen spears. Their defense is silence, stillness, a complete denial of your existence. Because if they don't see you, maybe the hunt won't either. If they don't speak your name, maybe it won't echo through the fog. If they don't open the door, maybe you'll die far enough away that the hoofbeats won't shake their windows. You stand in the center of the village now, staring at doors that won't open, windows that won't blink. You are surrounded by the living, and yet utterly alone. You shout, finally, because what else is there to do? A curse, a plea, a question, anything. The words spill out, torn from your throat like they've been waiting, but the village does not move. Even your voice doesn't echo. It dies in the dirt, swallowed by a place that has already buried too much. You want to be angry. You want to kick the doors down, force the truth into the open. But even you know it would change nothing. They are not cruel. They are not cowardly. They are simply trying to survive. And survival here means pretending you never happened. You turn to leave, because there's nothing else to do. As you walk, a shutter creaks open behind you. You don't turn to look. You know what you'll see. A child, maybe, or an old man. Someone watching. Someone wondering if your footsteps will be the last they hear, because if they are, the hunt has passed. And if they aren't, it's still coming. You didn't mean to steal. That's the part that stings the worst. You weren't trying to desecrate a sacred grove or rob the dead. You were trying to survive. Maybe you needed fire kindling and took a bundle of twigs tied with red thread. Maybe you found a feather in the mud and tucked it behind your ear, thinking it looked like something from a dream. Or maybe it was the coin, PSM, half buried, shimmering faintly in the dirt like it had been placed there just for you. Maybe it was none of these, or all of them. It doesn't matter now. The forest noticed. You didn't know the rules, not the real ones. You thought danger had signs, warnings, consequences you could reason through. But here, the law is older, colder. There are no warning labels in the underworld. No one yells stop in the tongue of the wind. What you took didn't belong to you. Worse than that, it did belong to something else, and that something wants it back. In the old tales, the forest is a body, roots like veins, trees like bones, fog like breath. It lives, not in a metaphorical sense, but in the way a predator lives. Watching, waiting, weighing. Everything inside it has a place, a pattern. Nothing is without purpose. The moss that grows only on the north side, the stones stacked in threes, the flowers that bloom for exactly one night and then disappear, never to return. If you disrupt that pattern, if you take, you shift the balance, and the forest will correct the imbalance the only way it knows how, by removing you. At first, it's small. You feel a pressure behind your eyes, like a headache trying to learn your name. You see things that might be shapes between the trees. You step lightly, but the ground groans beneath your feet, like it resents your weight. You sleep, but not deeply. The dreams are full of snapping branches and too many legs. The item you took burns hotter than the rest of your belongings. It doesn't physically heat, it just feels wrong, like it vibrates at the wrong frequency for this world. People here don't steal from the forest. They might take what's offered. 12 fallen branches, berries, water from a spring. But even then, they ask, with breath, with blood, with silence. You didn't ask. You just reached down and made it yours. And that, in this place, is a declaration of war. You don't remember the exact moment you picked it up, just the strange rush that followed. A warmth in your chest, a kind of quiet victory. You told yourself it was nothing, a trinket, a curiosity. You didn't hear the whisper behind you, or maybe you did and chalked it up to the wind. You didn't see the fox watching from between two birch trees, its eyes too wide and still. You didn't notice the way the trees seemed to lean closer together as you walked away, like they were closing behind you, sealing your fate. You should have left it. You know that now. But knowledge is useless in a place ruled by instinct. You can't undo a theft with regret. The forest doesn't take apologies. It takes payment. And you feel the debt accruing. Your path bends in circles now, returning you to the same crooked stump again and again, no matter which direction you walk. You swear you've counted that same cluster of mushrooms 5 times. You hear the creak of branches above you, but there's no wind, just tension, like the woods are holding their breath, waiting for something. The object is heavier now. You try to throw it away, but your hand won't move. Or worse, it does, but something catches it. A hesitation born from somewhere deep in the spine. You look at the coin, or the feather, or the skull. It doesn't shine anymore. It doesn't beckon. It just is, silent and still and wrong, like it knows it was stolen, like it's waiting to be claimed. You wonder if this is how it happens, if this is how the hunt chooses. Not by sin, but by scent. Not by morality, but by imbalance. A wrong note in the forest song, and the riders are called to correct it, not as judges, not as executioners. As symptoms of a system reacting to infection, you're not being punished. You're being cleaned up. You feel the forest shift. The pressure in the air increases. Sound becomes thick. The birds stop singing, not because of silence, but because they've fled. The insects follow. Even the light seems to hesitate, filtering through the canopy in thin, brittle lines that don't quite reach the ground. Something has noticed you, or maybe it always had. You try to return it. You dig a hole. You whisper something that might be a prayer. You place the item back where you found it, even brushing the dirt over it with your hands, like a child trying to undo a broken vase. But the forest doesn't respond. Because you don't get to decide when you've paid enough. You don't get to end the story just because you're sorry. The balance is not yours to restore. In some tales, the ones the crones tell only when they're deep into their cups, the forest gives warnings before it takes you. A hare walking on its hind legs. A shadow that moves faster than the body it's attached to. Your name spoken backwards in a voice that sounds like water choking on leaves. These are the signs that you're not a traveler anymore. You're an offering. You listen now, closely, afraid to move. You feel the trees pressing in, not with malice, but with indifference. Like a tide rolling in, like night falling, inevitable, impersonal. The forest doesn't hate you, it just wants what's missing. And the cost of your curiosity has been calculated. You should have left it, but you didn't. And now something is coming to take you instead. It begins with a sound you almost mistake for the wind. Low at first, like the echo of something ancient being stirred from under the dirt. Then the rhythm sharpens. Claws against stone, breath too hot for the air around it, a growl that doesn't end but loops into itself like a chant. You freeze where you stand. The fog thickens, not with moisture but with intent. Something is parting the veil, and it doesn't need a door. The first howl rips the night open. It is not a sound meant for ears. It is meant for marrow, for memory, for warning, and it carries a language you do not know, but which your bones somehow understand. There are no words, just the knowledge that something has arrived to devour you, and it does not care if you scream. You run, not because it will help, but because it's what prey does. The village is still shuttered tight. No lights, no faces, no hope. You pass the same closed doors you begged at only hours before, but now you don't even slow down. They won't open them. Not now. Not for you. Not for anything. You find the stable by accident. An old building leaning under its own weight, its wooden frame half collapsed, but still standing. You duck inside. The smell hits first. Manure. Rot. Something burnt. Hay lies in messy piles, scattered across the floor like someone tried to make a bed and failed. There are no horses. Just old leather straps nailed to beams and a trough filled with black water. But it's shelter. It's dark. And for a moment, that feels like safety. You bury yourself in the hay, hands shaking, breath shallow. You press your back to the wall, try to silence your own heartbeat. The cold from the stone seeps into your skin, reminding you that you are made of flesh, weak, visible, loud. You hold your breath as the sound outside grows louder. Claws dragging across earth, pads thudding in rhythm. There are more of them now. You can hear the pack forming, something primal, something that hunts, not for food, but for order. They are here to find what doesn't belong. They are here for you. One of them growls just outside, the kind of sound that pulls the air from your lungs. Then a second, deeper, more guttural, joined by a third that doesn't growl at all but clicks. Bone on bone, like jaws chewing through nothing. You try to stay still. You try to be invisible. Then, the hay shifts beside you. You don't move. Can't. Your eyes dart sideways, and there, too close, something stirs. Not large, not loud, just wrong. A slow inhale. The sound of teeth grinding together like they're sharpening. You hear the wet thud of something dragging itself through straw. You close your eyes, but it doesn't help. The darkness behind your lids is worse. One breath. Two. Then a low voice, not spoken but heard, slithers into your mind like a thought you didn't think. Found you. The bark explodes through the stable like thunder. It shakes the rafters. Hay bursts upward in a storm of dust and straw. You lurch backward just as a jaw snaps where your leg used to be. Fire dances in the creature's throat. IDI. Not flame, but light. an ember glow that spills from its mouth as it snarls. It doesn't have eyes, not really, just sockets lit from within by a cold blue fire, flickering with hunger. Its body is fur and ash and shadow, too large for a dog, too fast for a wolf. Something in between, but built for tracking, for chasing, for catching. Its tongue is too long, its legs too thin. It smells like the inside of a burnt church. You scramble out from under the hay as more shadows move behind it. 2, then 5, then 9. The pack has arrived. They don't enter together. They appear. One moment air, the next muscle and fang. They shimmer with wrongness, as if they were stitched from memory and nightmare. Their mouths hang open, panting in silence. One howls again, and the others follow. But this time you hear it clearly. Latin, a prayer, not one you know, not one meant for saving. They speak in the tongues of priests and executioners, and every syllable is a command, not to you, to the world, to the trees and sky and dirt, demanding the laws be upheld, demanding imbalance be purged. You throw yourself through the side of the stable, splinters tearing your arms, lungs heaving, blood pounding in your ears. You run toward nothing, because nothing is safer than here. You don't look back, but you hear them. Claws ripping soil, breath hissing like broken steam. They don't bark to scare you. They don't need to. You're already prey. You've already made the mistake. They sniffed it out the moment you crossed the boundary. They know the scent of theft, of guilt, of something that doesn't belong. They know your name, though you've never spoken it here. You left fingerprints where no hands should have touched. You whispered when you should have been silent. You crossed into a story that never invited you, and the dogs are the first chapter of the ending. You trip. You hit the ground hard. A tooth rattles in your mouth. You spit blood and dirt and crawl, dragging yourself toward a hollow log or a shadow or anything wide enough to vanish inside. But it's too late. They don't need you to run. They need you to fear, because the hunt feeds on fear the way fire feeds on air. And now the fire has a face. Dozens of them, all teeth, all hunger, all glowing from the inside out. You curl into yourself, hoping for pain, because pain means you're still real. But they don't strike. Not yet. They surround. They howl again. Not as a warning, but a signal. The riders are near, and the hounds have done their job. The trees don't part. They don't need to. The riders do not obey the laws of matter. They pass through the trunks like mist through cloth, leaving the bark untouched, but the air ruined. You hear no hoofbeats. The ground does not quake. The sound is subtler than thunder, but heavier than silence, like the groan of time folding inward. When you finally see them, it's as if they've always been there, just waiting for your eyes to adjust to the truth. There are 6, or 12, or more. The number shifts each time you blink. None of them wear full armor, yet all of them clink with the sound of chainmail. Some ride bare-chested, pale flesh stretched over bone like parchment over a frame. Others wear cloaks made of something that might once have been fur, now crawling with ash and rot. One has a helmet fused to his skull. Another rides without a head at all. Their horses are worse. Each steed is a cathedral of exposed anatomy. Ribs cracked open to reveal glowing interiors. Legs too long, too bent. Hooves that never touch the earth but drag just above it. One horse has no eyes, yet it sees. Another has too many, layered like barnacles along its jaw and flank. Their breath steams, not from nostrils, but from open wounds. You smell smoke and sulfur and something sweet underneath, like rotting fruit dipped in honey. And yet they move as one. No reins, no commands, just purpose. You press your back to the nearest tree and try to vanish, not physically and spiritually. You will your soul to fold into something unnoticeable, something not worth the effort. But they are not hunting your body. They are hunting your imbalance, your disruption. The error in the pattern you made by existing here at the wrong time with the wrong hands and the wrong breath. One of them turns its head toward you. You don't know if it sees you, but you feel the temperature of your blood drop. Not from fear, but recognition. You've been marked, not by a god or a devil, but by inevitability. This one wears the remnants of a crown. Its face is a skull, but not dead, just absent, as if its identity was traded for permission to lead. Around its neck hangs a string of dried tongues. Its horse has wings, but they're skeletal, dragging through the undergrowth like a curse. It doesn't speak, but the air around it warps with memory. You remember sins you didn't commit. Feel guilt for lives that aren't yours. You remember being hunted, not just now, but always. Every near miss, every shadow at your back. This isn't the first time something came for you, just the first time it didn't stop. Another rider holds a horn, not of brass or bone, but something older, maybe the curled spine of a beast that never belonged to this world. It doesn't blow it. It doesn't need to. The silence is already split, fraying at the edges like old parchment. The trees are bending now, not swaying, bending toward the riders, in reverence or surrender. You think of the stories, the ones told by hearthlight, softened with ale and laughter. They never sounded like this. No bard ever spoke of the smell, the pressure in your chest, the way the hunt feels like drowning without water. No one mentioned the paralysis, the awareness that runs miles ahead of your feet but cannot move your legs. No one said it would know you, not just where you are, but who. They move slowly, not because they must, but because they can. Like lions approaching a deer that already understands it was born for this moment. You try to breathe quietly, but the fog betrays you. Your exhale curls upward like a beacon. One rider tilts its head. A dog growls in the distance. You know what happens next. You run, not away. There's nowhere to go, but between the roots and rocks and prayers you half remember. The forest is not on your side, but it's a place, a shape. You can navigate shapes. You leap over a stream that wasn't there a moment ago, cut your shoulder on a branch that reached out to grab, and stumble into a clearing that smells of blood and lavender. They follow, not on a path, but in a line of logic that doesn't need roads. Wherever you are, they will be. They are less riders and more arithmetic. You are the equation, and they are solving you. You trip. You scream. You don't recognize your own voice. One of them is above you. Its face is made of mirrors. Each pane reflects a different expression of your own fear. Smiling, crying, burning, screaming. One pane shows you as a child. Another shows a version of you that never escaped. Another shows bones. The rider raises its hand, but it doesn't strike. Instead, it waits, because the hunt is not about haste. It is about ceremony, and the ritual demands witnesses. You feel the others surrounding you, not in space, but in meaning, like chapters closing around the final page. You're not bleeding, but you're being emptied. Something is being pulled from your chest. Memory, maybe, or consequence. Then the crowned one approaches, and for the first time, something speaks. Not in Latin, not in howls, but in you, in your own voice, warped with age and echo. You were warned, and you were, by the trees, by the village, by the silence, but you came anyway. And now, the hunt rides through you. You run because your legs tell you to, not your mind. Your mind knows this is pointless. Your mind knows this is myth, and myth isn't outrun. But your legs haven't read the stories. Your lungs haven't studied medieval folklore. So, you run. All. Heart pounding, ribs threatening to snap, blood screaming through veins like a fire alarm that no one can shut off. You leap over roots. You crash through brush. You dive beneath branches that scratch your face open, like they're trying to keep you. You think speed will save you. It won't. You pick east because that's where the sun would rise. If there was a sun, if there was a sky, if this place still followed rules. But light doesn't belong here anymore. Direction doesn't either. You could run east for 6 hours and arrive in the same clearing, the same stump, the same broken shrine you passed minutes ago. You're not on a path. You're inside a loop, a legend, a story that only ends one way. And it's not with escape. The hunt doesn't chase like predators do. They don't need line of sight. They don't sniff your trail and calculate distance. They are not wolves. They are inevitability, and inevitability does not break a sweat. When you run east, they come from the west. When you veer north, they appear from the south. You think you spot a break in the trees, a slope that might lead somewhere, anywhere. And you sprint toward it, full speed, not caring if you fall. At the top, they're already waiting. No motion, no thunder. Just there, standing, breathing smoke, watching. You freeze, panting, heart in your teeth. One of the riders lifts its head. You see its face clearly now. It's your father's, or your enemy's, or no one's. A hollow shape that rearranges to become whatever haunts you the most. It doesn't need to attack. It just needs to be. And you break again, turning, falling, sliding back down the slope on hands and knees, swallowing dirt and shame and the metallic taste of folklore. Because that's what this is. You are not in a place. You are in a belief. In our world, physics is governed by mass and force and time. In their world, it's governed by fear, by omen, by stories passed down in whispers and scrawled in the margins of psalters no one dared to read aloud. You are trying to escape with logic. They are hunting with narrative, and the narrative is already written. You fall again, ankle twisting, breath hitching in your chest. You try to stand, but the ground grabs you. Vines curling, roots shifting, dirt softening like quicksand that's waited centuries for this moment. You drag yourself forward, clawing at tufts of grass that turn to ash in your hands. You spit a prayer, but the words unravel in your mouth like cobwebs. Language doesn't work here, unless it's earned. Something howls behind you. Not a dog this time, not an animal. A voice, human but too wide, too layered, like a choir of wrongness filtered through a cathedral on fire. You get up. You run again. It starts to snow. Not gently, not peacefully. The flakes are black and sharp, like soot folded into frost. They stick to your skin and burn like nettles. You wipe your face and your hand comes back smeared with something red. Not blood. Not quite. Thinner. Older. Like ink from a book that never wanted to be opened. Your skin itches where it touched you. Then it stops itching altogether. Just numb. Cold from the inside. The hunt doesn't tire. That's the cruelest part. You could run until your feet are bone and your lungs collapse and your muscles shred themselves into jelly, and they would still be behind you, still beside you, still ahead of you. Because distance means nothing here. Time is flexible. Space bends. The hunt exists at every point in the forest simultaneously. Every echo, every breeze, every misplaced footprint. They do not chase you through space. They chase you through story, and the story needs an ending. You try to cut across a river, thinking maybe, just maybe, water will slow them. It's cold, bone-achingly cold. The current bites at your legs like teeth. You wade through, chest deep, gasping. You reach the far side, soaked, shaking, alive. You look back. One of the horses walks across the water like it's a painting, not breaking the surface, not rippling, just gliding. Another rider follows, shoulders wreathed in crows that peel off and vanish into the trees. One crow circles overhead. Its eyes glow. You blink. The rider is gone. You hear them behind you, and in front of you, and above you. Every direction collapses into one. Closer. You scream. Not because you think it will help, but because you don't know what else to do with your mouth. The sound doesn't echo. It just stops, swallowed by something too large to comprehend. You are not the first to be here. You are not the first to run. The forest has heard this all before. It is not impressed. You think of climbing a tree, of hiding underground, of doubling back. But the moment you think it, you know it won't work. They don't track actions. They track intent. Your fear writes the map, and they read it like scripture. You cannot outsmart a curse. You cannot outrun a myth. Because myths cheat. They don't follow rules. They make them. And the hunt, this living legend stitched from panic and prophecy, is the oldest rule breaker of them all. You've been running in circles, not through geography, but through narrative. And stories don't let the prey win. They let the prey hope. And then they close the book. You see him before you understand what you're seeing. At first, he's just another shadow in the forest, darker than the rest, shaped almost like a man, if a man could stretch tall enough to scrape the sky. The antlers break the silhouette. Thick, branching things, more tree than bone, wreathed in strips of weathered cloth and dried things that used to be living. Crow feathers, human teeth, something that still twitches when the wind shifts. You stop moving because you forget how. Your body hasn't caught up to your fear yet. Your blood, yes. Your lungs, already shallow. But your limbs? Frozen. He steps forward, and the air dies around him. Not goes quiet, dies, like it's been pulled from your throat. His feet don't quite touch the ground, but they leave behind frost where he passes. The leaves blacken, curl inward, and disintegrate in silence. Behind him, the hunt stands at rest, an army of impossible things stilled like statues. The hounds sit, the riders bow, the wind itself seems to lean in, because the hunt has a king, and he has found you. His face is wrong in all the ways that matter. At a glance, it's human. Cheekbones, jawline, lips. But the details fail on inspection. The eyes are too wide, too sunken, glowing like embers tucked in hollow sockets. His skin looks carved, not grown, as if someone whittled it into existence with a dull knife and too much hunger. Lines run down from his temples to his chin like cracks in a statue. His teeth, when he smiles, are flat and many. Not sharp, not fanged, just too many. And then he speaks. Your name leaves his mouth like a song half swallowed by smoke. You don't hear it with your ears. You feel it in your spine. Like cold water, like breath that doesn't belong to you. The syllables twist through the air, and each one smells like wet bark and something sour underneath. You didn't tell him your name. You didn't whisper it. You didn't write it in the dirt or speak it aloud even once. He says it anyway, because he knew it before you did. Your knees give. You don't kneel. You collapse. Your body crumples like it's trying to escape itself. He doesn't move closer. He doesn't need to. His presence is already wrapped around you like a second skin. You feel the weight of his gaze not on your face, but in your chest, like he's reading your heart one beat at a time, judging the shape of your soul, and finding it lacking. He lifts one hand, long fingers, too long. The nails are horn, curved and ridged. When he points, it's not a gesture, it's a verdict. You remember stories now, not ones you read. Older, deeper, tales whispered by wind through keyholes or muttered by dying monks on frostbitten hills. Stories of the Earl King, of Herne, of the old gods who hunted men for sport, for justice, or for silence. Of horned spirits who wore the forest like a crown and punished those who walked roads they didn't build. You are not being chased by ghosts. You are being judged by a myth older than memory. His voice comes again. Not your name this time. Just words, raw and ancient, echoing through the trees and across your bones. They don't translate. They don't need to. The meaning is buried in your marrow now, etched into the places language can't reach. You understand without knowing how. You were warned. You were told not to take. You were told not to walk the paths after dusk. You were told not to answer the horn. And still, you ran. He lowers his arm, and the world moves again. The riders shift. The dogs rise. The trees creak like they've just woken from a long, angry sleep. You want to run, but this time your legs know better. This time, your body finally understands the truth. You don't outrun kings, especially not the kind that rule in silence and ash. You try to speak, maybe to beg, maybe to explain, but your voice dies in your throat, crushed by the weight of the air he carries. Words don't work here, only truths, and yours is simple. You are prey. He steps forward. The antlers brush the highest branches and the trees bend away. They make room. They offer room. The light behind him dims, even though there was never a sun to begin with. Your skin prickles, not from cold, but recognition, somewhere in the deepest part of you, the part that dreams in symbols and wakes in dread. You have seen this shape before, in nightmares, in lullabies, in warnings whispered by people who never survive to finish the tale. He crouches, slow and deliberate, until his face is inches from yours. The glow from his eyes flickers across your cheeks. You don't blink. You can't. If you do, you might never open them again. His breath smells like winter in places where no footsteps have ever fallen, like rot, sealed in snow, like memory turned sour. And when he speaks this time, it's not words. It's not even sound. It's an invitation, not to live, not to die, but to belong. You feel the pressure build behind your eyes, a warmth that doesn't come from you. Your limbs tremble, your fingers curl. Something inside begins to fracture, like glass beneath too much weight. The myth isn't killing you. It's changing you. Because some stories don't end with death. Some end with transformation. He touches your forehead with one finger, and the forest exhales. The horn doesn't begin. It cancels. You're not sure exactly when it starts, only that everything else ends. Wind, gone. Rustling leaves, silent. The ever-present creak of ancient branches that seem to breathe with the forest, vanished. Even your own breath is muffled, swallowed before it can escape your lips. It's not quiet. It's subtraction. The kind of silence that makes your eardrums throb, like they're grasping for a frequency that no longer exists. Birds drop from trees like marionettes, whose strings have been sliced. Not killed, not wounded, just deactivated. The forest no longer has room for them. Rabbits freeze mid-bound, eyes wide and glassy, forgetting what motion feels like. Somewhere, a fox turns to stone mid-snarl, mouth open around a sound it will never finish. The world has been paused, or maybe overwritten. You don't hear the horn. You notice its absence. A low pull behind your eyes, a pressure like altitude sickness but older, deeper. Your pulse stutters, not slows, it stutters, like it's trying to remember the rhythm it used to follow. The beat that was yours now jerks to another pace, a stranger's cadence, one more ancient than bone, and that's when you realize it's not a chase anymore. It never was. You're being selected, not for death, not for mercy, for meaning. The hunt does not pursue at random. It doesn't waste its hunger on the lost or the weak unless they deserve it. The horn is not a trumpet of war. It is a summons, a sacred announcement that you are no longer a passerby. You are part of the story now, threaded into the fabric, sewn between verses, and stories do not allow loose ends. You try to move, but your legs won't obey. Your arms hang useless. Even your thoughts seem slower, as though the horn has reached inside and dulled the edges of your will. You're still breathing, but only because something else has allowed it. You are upright, but not balanced. The wind moves your hair, but not the trees. You are a puppet without strings, held up by narrative tension alone. The horn continues in its anti-song, each moment of its echo flattening the world further. The horizon blurs. Color leaches from the underbrush, fading to shades of gray and rust. The forest isn't dimming. It's losing contrast, losing decision. The world is being rendered in myth tone now, and you, standing in the center of it, are being written into the next stanza, somewhere between two trees that weren't there a moment ago. The riders emerge, not charging, gliding, a dozen or more, faces hidden beneath helms of bone and starlight, cloaks dragging along the ground without making a sound. Their horses' hooves do not strike the dirt. They simply pass through it, leaving behind scorched impressions like the memories of footsteps. You want to scream, but that too has been taken. The horn quiets, not fades, and ceases, like a candle snuffed by breath that doesn't belong to this plane. The silence it leaves behind is not the silence of peace. It is the aftermath of a ritual. Something has been decided, and you feel it in your chest, in your ribs, now hollow, in your heartbeat, now foreign. You have been picked, and not for salvation. Your eyes scan the riders, hoping for something familiar, something human in the midst of the procession. But all you find are masks, wooden, metallic, living, some shaped like beasts, others blank as gravestones. Each one stares straight ahead, not at you, but through you, like they already know what happens next and are just waiting for you to catch up. You take a step, not because you choose to, but because the story does. And suddenly, it's as if the forest exhales again, filling the vacuum left behind by the horn. Sound returns in fragments. A raven calls. Somewhere, a twig snaps. The wind picks up, but it carries no scent, no temperature, only motion. A reminder that time is still crawling forward, even if you're not. You fall to your knees, not in fear, in acceptance. There's something terrifying about being chosen, not hunted, not hated, chosen, because it means someone or something looked into you and decided you matched the shape of the legend, that your shadow would fit perfectly into the hollow, cut out for it in some forgotten verse. You were always going to hear the horn. You just didn't know it. One rider breaks from the group, taller than the rest, cloaked in what looks like mist woven into fabric. Its mask is featureless except for two vertical slits where eyes might be. Blue light pulses from within. It stops inches from you and raises a hand, gloved in bark and rot, and something more precious. Memory. It points. The horn sounds again. Or rather, it unsounds, and your name disappears from your mind. Not because it was taken, because it was never needed. Not anymore. The story has claimed you. The chapel is smaller than you imagined. Not grand, not holy in the way storybooks paint them, more like a barn with delusions of grandeur. Stones cracked by frost, a wooden door barely hanging on its hinges. The smell inside is mildew, old tallow, and fear. Candles still burn, but they flicker, like they're reconsidering the effort. You duck beneath the arch and step inside, your breath fogging in the cold, stale air. It's darker than it should be. Not night dark, but faithless, like hope tried to bloom here once and died quietly in the rafters. The pews are crooked, half broken, some overturned. You step past a scattering of prayer books with more mildew than scripture, their pages curling like they're ashamed of what's written inside. A draft slips through the chinks in the wall, carrying the scent of pine sap and something older, something damp and fungal. Like the earth outside is preparing to reclaim the building. You call out, because the silence is unbearable, and from behind the altar, something moves, a rustle, a breath. Then a head appears, trembling, eyes wide, face hollow like the hunger of time has already begun its work. The priest, or what's left of one. His robes are filthy. His hands shake as he clutches a rosary so tightly the beads have left welts in his palms. He stares at you, not with surprise, but with that dull recognition of someone watching their nightmare arrive right on time. You ask him if you're safe here. He doesn't answer, just glances at the door, then at the windows, then at the crucifix above the altar, hanging askew, as if it too had tried to flee and didn't make it far. You ask again. Finally, he whispers, "It doesn't come here often. Not, you're safe. Not, you're protected. Just a frequency, like a thunderstorm or a wolf." You press him. What does he mean? Doesn't come here often. He doesn't look at you, just lowers his voice to a rasp and says, "It knows the walls are weak." You ask if he means the walls of the chapel, and he says no. He means the walls of belief. There was a time, he says, when the people believed the church could shield them, when they would crowd in here, dozens at a time, clutching relics and crosses, chanting prayers like armor. And sometimes it worked. Sometimes the hunt would pass by without stopping. Sometimes the horn would cry and the doors would hold. Sometimes the spirits would circle but not enter. But belief is not mortar, and fear is not faith. He shakes his head and mutters a string of Latin that sounds more like pleading than scripture. The words feel brittle, performed, like a song repeated by someone who no longer remembers the melody. You look around and realize the walls are covered in scratches, deep gouges in the stone near the doorframe, as if someone once tried to claw their way in, not out. And near the back of the chapel, a crucifix has been broken in two, not fallen, broken, snapped cleanly down the center, and burned at the base. You ask who did it. He just says, "They do not respect symbols." You think back to the stories, holy ground, crosses, bells, protection in the name of the Father. You think about all the times legends turned away at the sight of a Bible. But this isn't a bedtime story. This isn't a world written with rules and exemptions. This is older than doctrine, older than Rome. The wild hunt predates churches. It predates God, at least the one this priest worships. It belongs to the soil, the rot, the branch that grew crooked in the dark before anyone thought to straighten it. You ask the priest what you can do. He says, "Leave," but there's something broken in the way he says it. Not panic, not warning, just a dull certainty. The kind of voice used by gravediggers measuring plots. There's no urgency because he already knows the ending. You glance at the altar, hoping for something, anything, worth praying to. But even the icons look afraid. The Virgin's face is cracked down the cheek, as if weeping dust. The saints are covered in cobwebs, their eyes turned not to heaven, but toward the floor, like they've already knelt in surrender. You pick up a candle and try to light it. The flame holds for a second, then dies. The wick wasn't wet. It wasn't faulty. It just refused. The priest finally stands. He holds the rosary out to you, but doesn't let go. "It won't stop them," he says, "but it might confuse them." You ask how. He shrugs. Sometimes they forget what century it is. You don't know whether he's joking. You don't ask. You take the rosary anyway. Outside, the wind has stopped. That should feel like a comfort, but your skin tells a different story. The air is waiting, listening. You walk toward the chapel doors. The priest stays behind. He doesn't follow, doesn't offer blessing or farewell. He's already kneeling again, already hiding beneath the altar, because he knows the truth. The church can't save you, not from this. The graveyard is silent, but not still. Stones lean like old drunks, cracked and sunken into soil that hasn't forgotten how to breathe. The air smells like moss and old parchment, like something half preserved in time and half rotted out of it. You step through the crooked gate. If you can call a splintered plank lashed to two leaning posts a gate at all, and the rusted hinge creaks not in protest but in warning, there is no path, just soft earth, patches of frost, and gravestones with names you can't pronounce, if they even still have names at all. Many have been worn blank by weather and centuries. Others bear carvings that are closer to symbols than scripture, folk signs etched to keep something out or in. You tell yourself this is the safest place to sleep. No one in the stories ever takes the dead. Maybe the hunt will pass you by, thinking the job's already done. You lay down between two stones. They lean toward you like old sentinels, or maybe they're just tired. The ground beneath you is damp, soft, too soft, like it's still settling, still making room. You pull your cloak tighter, such as it is, and bury your head in your arms. It's not warm. The cold is in your bones now, a deep ache that pulses with every heartbeat. But exhaustion dulls the edge of fear, and in the back of your mind, a childish logic hums louder than any superstition. You can't hunt what's already buried. You fall asleep thinking of that lie. The first hour is dreamless, just blackness and cold. But then something shifts, not a sound, something deeper. Like your body knows before your brain does. Your limbs tense. Your breath catches. Something has changed in the dark. You open your eyes and the night has grown a second shade. Not darker, fuller. Like the air around you has thickened into a weight, a presence. You're not alone. You don't move. Not yet. Your eyes scan the cemetery. It's the same as before. Until it isn't. Until you see that the mist curling along the graves isn't mist at all. It rises too slowly, too deliberately. It gathers at the base of the stones like breath returning to lungs. One by one, figures begin to take shape, not like ghosts. There's no glow, no shimmer, no theatrical moan. These aren't spirits conjured by grief or memory. These are watchers. They stand still, silent. Dozens of them. You sit up slowly. You don't speak. You don't dare. One wrong word feels like it could tear the veil wide open. The dead do not blink. They just observe. Tattered robes, bones visible beneath shreds of burial cloth. Some bear the remnants of armor. Others hold nothing at all. But their faces, if you can call them that, are not what you expect. There is no rage, no agony, no unfinished business, just stillness and something worse. Recognition. You don't know how, but they know who you are. One steps forward, or rather, it glides. Its feet never touch the ground. Its jaw moves, but the voice doesn't come from its mouth. It comes from behind you. They're here for you. The words feel cold as they enter your ears, like frost crawling down your spine. You whip around, but nothing is there. Just the same grave, the same crooked trees beyond the fence. But the feeling stays, like you've been turned inside out, and someone is reading your name from beneath your skin. You turn back to the figure, but it's already fading, not retreating, sinking, like the grave has reclaimed it, satisfied its message was delivered. One by one, the others follow. No sound, no farewell, just silence closing over them like a lid. Then, in the distance, you hear it. Not the horn. Not yet. Just the wind shifting in a way that no longer belongs to weather. You stand. Too fast. Your legs ache from cold and nerves. The sky hasn't changed, but the world feels smaller. Like the hunt has already bent the forest around itself, drawing in reality like a noose. You step carefully toward the edge of the graveyard, past names erased by time and others deliberately scratched out. No one wants to remember those names. You wonder if yours will one day be among them. As you near the gate, something catches your eye. A fresh grave, newer than the rest. The dirt still turned. No grass, no moss, just raw earth and a single stone with no inscription. Just a line, carved too deep to be chance. A line that curves, spirals, ends in a mark that looks eerily like an eye. You don't know why, but you kneel. You place your hand on the soil. It's warm and moving. You leap back, heart pounding, breath fogging hard. The soil stills. The warmth fades. But the feeling doesn't. The mark on the stone stares back. You don't know its meaning, but you know it's yours. The wind carries a distant sound now. Not quite a horn, not quite hoofbeats. Like the forest has begun humming in its sleep. You look up one last time before leaving the graveyard, and every single gravestone is facing you. The hunt didn't begin with demons. It began with gods. Not the clean ones with golden halos and church bells, but older ones, wreathed in shadow, crowned in bone, worshipped with blood and breath and silence beneath the moon. These gods had no names you could speak without biting your tongue. They belonged to the woods, the wind, the crack of thunder when no storm was near. They rode the skies during midwinter, cloaked in mist and storm cloud, hooves like war drums, hounds with coal eyes. And the people who lived under those skies didn't fear them exactly. They respected them, which in pagan terms was often worse. Back then, the hunt wasn't evil. It wasn't even necessarily bad. It was a force, like fire or childbirth or famine, not malicious, just inevitable. It passed overhead and you stayed inside, offered bread and beer at your doorstep, turned your boots backward, left the hearth burning. You didn't watch. You didn't whistle. You didn't say their names. You endured. The stories said they were led by gods with one eye, or antlered kings with stag's blood on their breath. Some whispered the hunt came to collect the souls of the newly dead, or escort warriors to the other world, or chase down oath-breakers through bramble and mist until nothing was left but teeth. And people believed all of it, because they had to, because in the ancient cold, belief was insulation. Then the church arrived, not with fire and sword, at least, not at first, but with parchment and wine and the kind of smile that precedes conquest. They built their churches atop the old groves. They hammered crosses into stones that once bore runes, and they rewrote the stories. Not subtly, not gradually, bluntly. What was once a procession of gods became a cavalcade of demons. The horned god became the devil himself. The goddesses of the forest became witches, midwives, heretics. The hunt, once a sign of passing judgment on the year, became an army of the damned, seeking souls for hell. They rebranded mythology the way merchants rebrand spoiled wine. New label, same poison, and people believed it. Because fear is easier to sell than nuance. But the hunt didn't change. It still rode during Yuletide, still swept through trees like fog set aflame, still howled in a language older than language. The peasants, those caught between myth and doctrine, knew the difference. You can kneel in pews all you want, but when the wind screams your name at midnight and the dogs bay in Latin, no sermon will keep your door shut. You ask the villagers who the hunt belongs to, and they won't say God. They'll say it belongs to the wild, to the forgotten, to the things the church couldn't tame. One old woman whispers that the hunt comes when too many people forget the old ways. Another swears it's drawn by blood left unburied. A drunken blacksmith insists the hunt only rides when the forest has been insulted. Trees felled without thanks, fires lit without prayer. All of them disagree on why the hunt comes, but none of them doubt that it comes. The priests tried to stop the stories, declared them heresy, had men whipped for speaking of horned kings, hung women who left bread at their doors, burned books, tore down shrines, salted the earth. And still, on certain nights, every candle would blow out at once, every dog would whine and hide, children would wake crying from dreams of hooves and screaming skies. They couldn't erase what was older than erasure, so they did the next best thing. They turned it into punishment. Now the hunt came not for the worthy dead, but the wicked, not to ferry brave warriors, but to claim sinners, those who danced too freely or touched flesh without marriage, or heard voices in the trees and didn't confess them away. The theology shifted from protection to control. The hunt became a morality play with fire and brimstone hooves, and suddenly everyone had someone they feared it might take. The unbeliever, the neighbor who didn't kneel, the healer who spoke to birds, the girl with a birthmark shaped too much like a crescent moon. The hunt became a tool, a holy rumor, and still, the screaming never changed. You ask someone what the hunt sounds like. They say it's like being remembered by something that should have forgotten you. You ask if prayers work. They say maybe, if the God you're praying to is listening, and if he isn't scared himself. You pass by a church wall, etched with strange symbols, half cross, half rune, protective charms, folk Christianity, the blend of desperation and compromise. Even now, centuries later, people hedge their bets. They carry crucifixes in one hand and iron nails in the other. They recite the Lord's Prayer, but whisper it through rowan wood, because deep down, they know this isn't about God. It never was. The hunt rides when the world forgets to be afraid of what it once was. And tonight, the woods remember. The rules are old, older than scripture, older than kingdoms, older than the shape of the words you think in. They're not written down, they're woven into soil, into wind, into the aching silence between one heartbeat and the next. The wild hunt does not follow your logic, your science, your prayers offered too late, but it follows rules nonetheless, just not the ones that favor you. They only chase at night, not because daylight weakens them, but that would be comforting. That would suggest they're creatures with limits. No, they avoid daylight because that's your time, not theirs. The sun belongs to fields, to markets, to voices raised in laughter and barter. But night, night, is a contract. A window that opens between the world you trust and the one that waits behind it. The hunt steps through that window, not like thieves, but like kings returning home. They skip homes with rowan hung on the door, not because rowan is magic, but because rowan is remembrance. The kind of memory that smells like smoke and milk and stories told by firelight. Rowan isn't protection, it's a message. A declaration. We know you. We haven't forgotten. The hunt sees the branch and moves on because it recognizes reverence, or maybe it just resents being expected. They never cross salt. Salt is purity, yes, but also permanence. Salt doesn't rot. It doesn't weep. It preserves, and the hunt loathes preservation. They are rot and ride and ruin, entropy on hooves. They won't cross salt unless they're asked, invited in like cold through an open door. And you didn't. You didn't light candles. You didn't lay a rowan branch. You didn't circle your camp with salt. You breathed. That was enough. Because the worst rule of the hunt, the one not whispered in tales or etched in stone, is this. They can only chase the living. The breath left your lips in a soft cloud. A mistake made by every human who ever tried to hide in a place older than themselves. It wasn't the warmth that gave you away. It wasn't even the sound. It was the affirmation that you are here, that you are alive, that you are still something that can be taken. The hunt doesn't kill for sport. It collects. It gathers those who wander too far from firelight, those who forget the boundaries, those who trespass through stories like tourists. To them, you're a noise in the wrong room, a laugh during a funeral, a spark on wet kindling. You don't belong here, not because you're unworthy, but because you remember a world where monsters come with explanations. Here, they come with teeth. You sit behind a fallen tree, heart hammering, trying to remember everything the old woman said. Did she mention mistletoe? Was it horseshoes or iron nails? Was it a rhyme? Something about threes? You bite your lip until you taste metal, hoping blood counts as sacrifice, hoping it will be enough to cancel out your mistake. But you've already broken the rule. They know you're breathing. The forest presses in. Not just with darkness, but with a kind of awareness. Trees no longer sway in wind, tempent. They lean, watching. The moss muffles your footsteps, but the silence beneath it remembers them. The ground doesn't forgive. The sky doesn't protect. Even the stars seem to blink less, as if afraid to draw attention. The hunt doesn't gallop all at once. That's another lie the stories told you. They arrive in layers. First the wind, then the scent, like burnt pine and wet fur and old iron. Then the pressure in your skull, like you've just remembered something you were never supposed to forget. And then the sounds. Not hoofbeats, not exactly. Something between thunder and screaming. A rhythm too chaotic to be music, too precise to be random. You stumble back. You whisper a name. Not yours. Maybe someone long gone. Maybe a god you haven't spoken to in years. It won't matter. The hunt doesn't trade. It doesn't bargain. It obeys rules only it remembers. You try to draw a circle in the dirt. Saltless, pointless. You mutter apologies to the trees, to the air, to the shadows that don't quite stay still. You remember someone saying not to look at them directly. You do anyway. Human nature, they say. Or maybe just human error. One of the riders is close now. You can't see them, but you feel them. The way your stomach sinks when lightning flashes behind your eyelids. The way your breath stutters when a shadow moves wrong. The way your childhood fear of closets and basements suddenly feels like prophecy instead of paranoia. They pause, just beyond the tree line, not because they're unsure, because they're savoring the moment, because you broke the rule, and now they get to follow theirs. The other world isn't a place. It's a state of wrongness so complete it feels holy, and the hunt is its enforcer. Not evil, not even cruel, just inevitable. You think if you can stay silent, still, invisible, maybe they'll pass. But you forget. You're still breathing. The hooves don't strike your skin. They strike something deeper, something behind your ribs, behind your breath, behind your years. You feel them before you hear them. The rhythm of something ancient collapsing into your spine like a verdict. You turn to run. Too late. The antlered rider is already raising his hand. The dogs snarl like thunder with language buried inside. And then the hunt passes through you. Not over you. Not around you. Through. It's not pain. Pain would be a mercy. Pain means nerves are still connected to something human. This is disconnection. Unmaking. Your body doesn't break. Your when does. 1 second you're a person, heavy and real and trying to breathe. The next, you're a memory being rewritten. Everything blinks. The forest unroots. Time doesn't bend. It bursts. And you fall into the rupture. You are 6 years old, chasing a robin across a snow-laced meadow. You are 87, alone in a stone cell, whispering a name you never meant to love. You are unborn, watching your parents kiss under a bleeding moon. You are 30, standing at the edge of a village with a stolen coin in your hand. You are 12, screaming as wolves drag your brother into the dark. You are none of these people. You are all of them. Your hands blur. Your breath hiccups forward and back. The trees flicker. Bare, then blooming, then aflame, then gone. You see the same crow die 7 different ways. You see yourself die 3. You fall through rain that freezes halfway down your back, then turns to fire before it hits the ground. You feel wind that smells like plague and perfume in the same breath. A storm screams a lullaby your mother never sang, but somehow you remember the tune. Voices speak in your head, not words, tenses. They unwrite you, and then silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that comes after a scream too loud to survive. Your ears ring with absence, your heartbeat ticks sideways, and you open your eyes. Same forest, same trees, same smell of moss and wood rot and iron in the wind. But something is wrong. The trees are bigger, older somehow, and sick. Some tilt like they've lost the memory of sunlight. The birds don't sing, not because it's night, but because they're different birds. Too thin, too many eyes. There's a hut where there wasn't one before, but it's abandoned, half eaten by ivy that pulses like it's breathing. You stand, or try to. Your knees shake like you haven't used them in centuries. You look at your hands. They're yours, but not quite. A scar you remember from falling into a river as a child is gone. In its place is a sigil, burned faintly into the flesh, like an afterimage. You touch it. It hums. There's no sound of horses now, no howl of dogs, just air that feels like it doesn't trust you. You walk, and every step is wrong, not just for you, for the world. The wind resists. The shadows tilt away from your feet. Even the soil feels thinner, as if time has stripped the forest of its depth. You find the road you first arrived on. It's still there, but narrower, grown over in places. The village, the one that wouldn't speak, is gone. Not burned, not ruined, just vanished, as if it exhaled one day and decided not to inhale again. You find a stone, carved, lichen eaten. You brush it clean. It says 1731, the year when the hunt passed through here, the year you vanished. You stagger backward, fall to your knees. Your breath clouds the air and then doesn't. Cold, then not. You're losing time again in little fits and starts. Seconds blink. The sun seems unsure where it belongs in the sky. You try to cry, but your tears hang in the air too long, like they're undecided about gravity. You are still being hunted, but not by the riders. By memory, by myth, by a world that now remembers you as a story. You were a warning, once. A tale told at doors left open too long. Don't go into the woods after dark, or you'll end up like the outsider. A whisper about the one who took a coin, or a feather, or a name not theirs to carry. The one who ran but didn't pray, who didn't bring salt, who breathed at the wrong moment. You were lost, and now you're back, except you're not. The world moved on without you, and the hunt left something behind. Not just a mark, a thread. You feel it, trailing behind your ribs like a tether pulled too tight. Somewhere, the antlered man still remembers your name. Somewhere, the dogs still sniff the wind with your shape on their tongues. You didn't survive the hunt. You're just what's left after it, and it isn't done with you yet. The cloak isn't heavy, but it settles on your shoulders like a sentence. The bones aren't clean. They're yellowed with age, ridged and whittled into shapes too precise to be decorative. Bird bones, mostly. Maybe rabbit. Something once small and screaming. The ash clings to the seams where sinew once held flesh. It doesn't dust off. It grows into the cloth, fed by the wind that hums low and wrong through the trees. You don't remember putting it on. You don't even remember finding it. You simply woke with it wrapped around your shoulders, tied by a cord made of braided hair. Some of it yours, some of it not. It doesn't itch. That would be human. It listens. And now, so do you. The trees speak in rustling groans, not with words but with warnings. They remember you, though not kindly. You hear them bicker. Not in any language your tongue could ever mimic, but in the creak of old bark and the hush of swaying branches. They argue about what you are now. Dead? No. Gone? Almost. Touched? Absolutely. One calls you half left. Another calls you stitched thin. You take a step, and the stars sob. Not from the sky, but beneath it, buried just behind the veil of what you used to call night. They wail in long, drawn breaths that feel like guilt. or maybe hunger. The cloak tugs slightly when they cry, as though guiding you toward them, or away. You can't be sure. Directions mean little now. You are no longer entirely alive. That realization comes slowly, in pieces. You touch your chest, and your heartbeat answers late. You try to blink, and your eyelids flutter like paper instead of skin. You place your hand on a tree trunk, and the bark pulls away slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. The same way rot recoils from fire. You want to be cold, but you're not. You want to be warm, but that's not quite right either. You feel like you exist between, not temperature, but seasons. Not quite winter, not yet spring. You reach for your reflection in a pool that shouldn't exist, that is stretch of still water where no stream flows. It shows you in pieces. Your eyes are your own, but older. Your teeth are too sharp. Not predator sharp, but punishment sharp, piled by something that didn't like you smiling. Your hands are pale, paler than death. You lift the cloak to your nose, and the scent nearly fells you. It smells like burned feathers and forgotten prayers. It smells like old thunder. It smells like home, but not to you. You try to take it off. It doesn't let you. The cloak was not gifted. It was bestowed. That's different. Gifts can be refused. This is a right, an unspoken promotion. You were caught by the hunt, not destroyed, not devoured, claimed. And now, in the ash-threaded folds of this garment, you carry proof. Proof that the hunt changes what it doesn't kill. Proof that being spared is never free. A memory stirs in the cloak. Not yours. A child. Once. Hair like thistle. Eyes too large. She wore the bone before you. She screamed for days and nights until her voice turned to wind, and her name was forgotten. The memory doesn't end. It just waits. Another stirs. A monk, maybe, or a priest. Blood on his collar. Symbols etched into his skin with rusted nails. He begged to be taken. He got his wish. The cloak is full of inheritances. Some whisper. Some scream. You begin to understand that you are not just wearing it. You are joining it. Layer by layer. Soul by soul. And now you're a chapter in its story, stitched between weeping and warning. The next wearer will feel you, not as a name, but as a weight, a whisper, a flash of a forest, too quiet, too cold, too full of things that run without feet. You try to speak. Your voice rasps out as dust and syllables that don't belong to your mouth. The cloak tightens around your throat, not to strangle, cloak, to silence. You are not allowed to teach what you've learned. The hunt has rules, and this one is ironclad. Survivors speak only in riddles or rot, or they don't speak at all. So you walk, not because there's anywhere to go, but because standing still feels like surrender. The forest doesn't part for you, but it watches. The trees sway with more rhythm now, as if counting your steps. The sky stays stuck in a bruised dusk that never settles, never lifts. Shadows grow without light. Leaves fall without wind. Everything is a little wrong, just like you. You come across a ring of stones, not carved, not arranged by hands like yours. They hum in time with your breath. The cloak responds, not with fear, but with recognition. This is a place of crossing, not between lands, between states, between real and remembered. You step inside the circle. The world holds its breath. The cloak goes quiet, and, for a moment, just one fragile, aching second, you feel something like peace. Then the stars weep again. The trees shudder. The cloak tugs once more, as if to remind you that peace was never part of the deal. You were spared, not saved, and now you belong to the hunt. They don't look like you at first. You mistake them for shadows, or pale trees with bark stripped away, or mist that lingers too long after dawn. But then one of them lifts its head, and you see the outline of a face. Not whole, not broken, something in between. Skin stretched too thin, eyes dull but still watching, lips that tremble as if shaping words no throat remembers how to form. You think you've stumbled on ghosts. Then one stumbles closer, dragging feet through mud, and you realize ghosts don't leave tracks. They are like you, half here, half elsewhere, half alive, half stolen. The hunt didn't kill them outright. It carved out what it wanted and left the rest to rot upright. You feel it in their presence, the weight of unfinished endings, the smell of damp wool and old fire. They wear remnants of clothes, but time has gnawed at the fabric. One man's tunic is still embroidered with faded crimson thread, a style you haven't seen in centuries. Another clutches a rosary so worn the beads are cracked into powder. A woman's dress hangs in tatters, but her hair is bound in a braid too clean, as though some part of her still remembers how to prepare for company. They don't speak. Not at first. They just look at you the way trees do, without expression, but with judgment. Their silence is worse than accusation. It's recognition. They see the bone cloak on your shoulders. They smell the ash in your veins. They know you're one of them now, whether you've accepted it or not. One steps forward. His jaw works, but the sound is broken, like a stringed instrument plucked after too many winters by the fire. At last, a word escapes. Or maybe it's not a word, just a sound shaped by the memory of language. Go, it rasps. Then the head tilts, eyes like pale marbles catching what little moonlight the forest will spare. Too late. Another shuffles close behind. Her lips move without noise. You lean in, desperate. And then, softly, you hear it, like rain on glass. They're always listening. You glance over your shoulder, expecting hounds, expecting riders, expecting the horn. Nothing. Just trees. Just the unbearable quiet of the hunted. Some of them try to warn you. They tug at your sleeve, point deeper into the forest, shake their heads at paths you consider taking. They're not clear. They can't be. They've lost too much language to make sense, but their gestures are frantic. A finger pressed to cracked lips, an arm raised as if shielding from blows that never arrive. You think you understand. Don't go where the moss glows. Don't drink from the stream that runs uphill. Don't stand where the air smells like violets, no matter how sweet. Most of them don't try. Most of them simply sink back into the trees and resume their wandering. They walk in slow circles, their heads bowed, steps dragging grooves into the earth that never fill in. Some rock back and forth, humming tones too low for human ears but loud enough to make your chest ache. Others stare at the sky, mouths open, as though waiting for something to descend. And when it rains, because of course, it rains, they weep, not like you remember weeping, not sobs or gasps, not clutched stomachs or snot or red eyes. Their tears slide silently, mixing with the water running down their faces until you can't tell what belongs to the sky and what belongs to them. They cry like it's ritual, like rain is the only time they're allowed. One of them takes your hand. The skin is cold, waxen, almost brittle, but it holds you with startling strength. The eyes lock on yours, and for the first time you hear more than a broken syllable. A sentence, whispered with such clarity, it feels stolen from another voice entirely. They don't end you, they empty you. You try to ask what that means, but the figure is already fading, not into mist, not into dirt, but into the blur between. You let go, but your palm still tingles. You realize then what the cloak truly is. Not a garment, a chorus. Every thread is a scream woven thin. Every bone is a fragment of someone the hunt refused to finish. You are wearing the voices of the taken. You are hearing them. Now, not in words, but in ache. That's why the trees murmur when you pass. That's why the stars sob. The world knows what you're carrying. You want to tear it off, to burn it, but you can't. Because when you clutch the cloak, when you dig your fingers into the ash-stitched seams, you understand the other truth. You're not just hearing them, they're hearing you. And one day, when someone else wakes in a forest that hates them, when someone else runs from hoofbeats and horns, when someone else breathes at the wrong time, you'll be the voice rising from the cloak to whisper in their ear, "Go." Too late. They're always listening. You feel yourself slipping. It's not dramatic. Not the clean tearing of soul from skin. Not some violent exorcism. It's quieter than that. A slow unthreading, like a rope unraveling strand by strand. You catch yourself wandering in circles, your feet tracing the same hollow path as the others, your breath sinking with theirs until it's no longer clear which lungs are filling and which are empty. The cloak settles heavier, whispering with every shift, urging you to surrender the last of what you've been holding on to. It would be easy. Easier than fear. Easier than fighting. Just stop remembering. Just join. And you almost do. But something catches. It's small, at first. A flicker of thought. A sound that doesn't belong to the hunt. You dig into your pocket without realizing why, and your fingers close around something you had forgotten was even there. Smooth, heavy, cold, in a way that feels natural, not supernatural. A stone. Just a simple river stone, rounded by years of water. Unremarkable. You don't know when you picked it up. Maybe at the edge of the forest. Maybe in a life that wasn't this one. But it's there, and it's yours. When you grip it, something sharp returns. A memory, so sudden it burns. A name, not theirs, yours. Not the half-stitched echo the hunt branded into your marrow, but the word your mother whispered when she thought you were asleep. The name shouted when you fell into the river. The name carved once, long ago, into a tree that may not even stand anymore. You say it, out loud, quietly, but enough. And for the first time since the hunt claimed you, the sound is yours. The cloak hisses. It doesn't like this. The bones clatter faintly, as though restless. The ash stitches tighten at your throat. The other half-dead turn their heads, blank eyes narrowing in something that might be confusion and might be hunger. They don't recognize the sound you just made. They don't remember names, not their own, not anyone's. But you do, and the forest reacts. The wind shifts, not randomly, but purposefully, circling you like a predator. The branches groan as if bending closer. You can hear the hounds again, distant but stirring. Not summoned by accident, not by the carelessness of breath, but by defiance, by audacity. You've stepped out of line. The hunt tolerates fear. It tolerates despair. It even tolerates silence. What it does not tolerate is resistance. And you've just remembered enough to resist. The other taken scatter. They don't run like people. They dissolve. They melt back into tree lines and root shadows, unwilling to be caught near you now that the hunt's attention has been sharpened. They weep without rain. They shake their hollow heads. You hear them whisper, "Fool, fool." Their voices echo through the cloak, a chorus of warnings. But you stand. Your knees still tremble. Your hands still shake. But you stand anyway. The stone presses hard into your palm, grounding you, reminding you that not everything you touch has to belong to them. That some things, no matter how small, are still yours to claim. You hold it like a weapon, though you know it's not. The hunt doesn't bleed. The hunt doesn't break. But you grip it anyway, because it anchors you to the one truth they can't yet take. You have a name, and that name means you are still alive. The forest answers. The horn doesn't sound. Not yet. But the silence grows sharper, the kind that peels at your skin. The dogs whine in anticipation. You feel the ground vibrate faintly, not with hooves, but with inevitability. You look into the trees and for a moment you see him again. the man with the antlers, the king crowned in shadow and rot. His eyes glow like coals starved for air. He doesn't move. He doesn't need to. His presence alone makes the air split around you. He knows. The hunt knows. You've remembered yourself, and for the first time, you understand why the others wept. It's not because they were taken. It's because they once fought and failed, because they once spoke their names, clutched their stones, whispered their memories, and still the hunt ground them down until they were nothing but ash in a cloak. But you aren't ash yet, not tonight. You clutch the stone so tightly it cuts into your palm. You repeat your name, louder this time, voice breaking, voice cracking, but still yours. The forest winces, the shadows ripple, and somewhere beyond the trees, the hounds begin to howl. Not for prey this time, for challenge. You almost became one of them, but you didn't. And now, the hunt is watching. You know it before the air stills, before the moon bruises into a color the sky should never wear, before the trees stiffen like soldiers holding their breath. The hunt is coming, and this time it isn't to taunt or test. It's to end what it began. You've been given too much time already. Borrowed days stitched together with ash and bone, a reprieve you were never meant to understand. Now, the debt is due, so you prepare. Not like a warrior, not like a hero. Heroes are myths of another kind, and this forest doesn't respect them any more than it respects saints or kings. You prepare like prey that has learned to read its predator's shadow. You gather what you can, herbs dug from roots, you half-remembered from whispered charms, iron pulled from a rusted hinge buried beneath a chapel floor, salt traded from a frightened villager who would not open her door wider than a hand's width. You arrange them with care, a circle, a barrier, a promise. You whisper the words you've stolen from priests and pagans alike, not because you believe they'll hold, but because belief itself might count for something. The cloak on your shoulders is restless. Its bones clatter like teeth in the cold. Its threads writhe with the murmur of voices that no longer know what silence means. They warn you, or mock you, or simply echo the hunt's approach. You don't push them away. You let them hum through your blood, because tonight you'll need every shadow of knowledge they offer. The runes come last. Scratched into stone with trembling hands, they look clumsy, almost childlike. But they are older than you, older than even the church's fear. You don't need them to be perfect. You only need them to be remembered. Memory is stronger than steel here. You press your finger into one, and the cut on your skin seals into the groove. A trade, small but binding. The forest waits, and then it begins. Not with hoofbeats, not with dogs, with silence, absolute and crushing, the kind that eats its way into your bones. The stars dim, one by one, as if extinguished by a hand too large for the sky. The wind folds inward, collapsing into itself. Your circle of salt glows faintly, not with light, but with defiance. The herbs shrivel as though they know what's coming. The horn, not a sound, but an erasure. The world around you thins, collapses, turns brittle like glass under strain. You feel your name tear at the edges again, as if trying to flee your tongue before it can be stolen. You hold it down with your breath, whisper it once, twice, until it feels heavier than the air pressing against you. The riders arrive. Not through trees, not from roads, but from absence. One moment the forest is whole, the next it is split by a line of inevitability, and they are already here. Horses with rib cages gaping like furnaces, hounds whose eyes burn with the memory of things never buried, riders in armor that glimmers with rot. At their head, the man with the antlers, his crown of bone silhouetted against a sky that is no longer night, no longer day, but something in between. His eyes glow like coals too long banked, ready now to flare. He raises his hand, and the hunt stops. Your heart should stop too. Maybe it does, but your body holds, barely. You stand inside your circle of salt and iron, every muscle trembling, every thought begging to collapse into nothingness. You know this is not a fight you can win. It never was. The hunt cannot be killed. It cannot be banished. It cannot be reasoned with. It can only be faced. So you speak. Not loudly, not boldly, but steadily. You say your name. You say where you were born. You say who you loved, who you buried, who you betrayed. You lay yourself bare like an offering, a ledger of sins and small mercies alike. You tell the truth because lies have no weight here. And for a moment, just one, the hunt listens. The hounds quiet. The riders tilt their heads. The antlered man lowers his hand. His gaze pierces the circle, burning through iron, through salt, through herbs, now turned to dust. You feel him inside your skull, scraping, searching, trying to pull you apart the way he has pulled apart so many before. But the stone in your pocket is still there. The name on your tongue is still yours. And the cloak, restless and whispering, does not betray you. The silence stretches until it's unbearable, until you want him to strike, to end it, just to release the weight of being seen. But instead, he turns his head. The hunt shifts. The hounds howl. The riders move again, not toward you, through you, past you. They're passing tears at your edges, but you hold. Barely. The circle holds too, though the salt is gone when you look down, licked away by wind that doesn't exist. And then, they are gone. No thunder, no horn, no smoke, just gone. You fall to your knees, shaking, your breath ragged, your name still clutched between your teeth like a dying ember. The cloak lies heavy on your shoulders, its whispers quieter now, almost reverent. You realize you have not beaten them. You never could. You have only survived. For now. And in surviving, you have done something few ever do. You have seen the hunt. You have spoken against it. You have been marked, but not taken. But the forest remembers, and the hunt does not forget. This was the last chase. Until the next. It was easier to believe it was demons. Easier to imagine some infernal cavalry thundering through the trees, dispatched from hell to punish the sinful. Easier to cast them as villains, to pretend survival was a matter of purity, prayer, or penance. Because if the hunt was just devils, then God might save you. If it was only ghosts, then salt or iron or holy water might hold them at bay. If it was punishment, then you could tell yourself you deserved it, and in that lie, you might find comfort. But the hunt isn't that kind. It isn't punishment. It isn't justice. It isn't even anger. The hunt is memory, raw and unrelenting, galloping across the skin of the world so nothing can be forgotten. Every hoofbeat is war. Every howl is famine. Every rider's scream is grief preserved in amber. The hunt is a litany of things too heavy to bury, things no sermon or story could scrub from the bones of the earth. Old gods, dethroned but never dead, children lost in snow, fields salted by men whose names history refuses to remember, wives who waited by fires that never saw their husbands return, brothers taken by plague, sisters drowned in rivers that never gave them back. The wild hunt is everything your world tried to forget, and it will not let you. When you first saw them, you thought they were monsters, faces warped, horses with ribs bared, dogs whose howls could crack glass. But now you recognize them. That jawline you glimpsed when the antlered man rode past. It was familiar, because you've seen it in woodcuts of kings, in statues eroded by rain. Those eyes glowing like forge coals. You've seen them before. In your father when the fever claimed him. In soldiers who never blinked again after the battle was done. The hunt is not strangers. It is everyone you already know, reflected back through the mirror of loss. That's why the villagers shut their doors. Not out of superstition, not only out of fear, but because when the hunt rides past, they hear the voices of their own dead calling from the trees. And what is more terrifying than being reminded that grief doesn't belong to you alone, that suffering is not singular, that the earth itself remembers every scream? You clutch your stone, you whisper your name, you think it will anchor you, but the truth is, the hunt doesn't want your body, it wants your story. That's all it's ever wanted. To ride through you, to take your terror, your loss, your defiance, and weave it into the endless procession. The Hunt is a book written in thunder. Every soul it touches becomes another line. You look back on the visions you fell through when time broke. The child chasing the robin, the monk praying for a death that never came, the girl with a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. You thought those were hallucinations. They weren't. They were entries. The hunt rides not only through forests and fields, but through memory itself, dragging the past forward so the present can't escape it. You didn't see strangers. You saw chapters, pages the hunt refuses to let rot. And when it rides again, tomorrow, next year, long after you are ash, it will ride, with your story sewn into its mane, a whisper in the cloak, a flicker in the horn. Not because you were special, not because you were chosen, but because no scream is wasted. This is what the church feared but never admitted. Not that the hunt was demonic, but that it was true. That memory itself is older than faith. That war and famine and grief were gods long before altars were carved. The priests told people to pray because prayer is neater than remembrance. Prayer ends with an amen. Memory doesn't end at all. You begin to understand why the riders' faces looked hollow, why their sockets burned but never blinked. They're not spirits. They're not gods. They are reminders. They ride to ensure the world does not pretend it was ever gentle. They ride to remind you that the past is not gone. It's galloping alongside you, waiting for the moment you grow foolish enough to believe you've escaped it. And here's the worst part. They don't hate you. They don't even notice you. You are only one more memory, flaring briefly, already fading, already waiting to be filed away in their endless procession. When the horn blows, it doesn't summon demons. It summons grief. It peels back the skin of the present and shows the bone of everything you've tried not to remember. The world goes silent not because it's afraid, but because there is no language for what the hunt carries. You think survival means they've let you go, but survival just means you've been written down. The hunt doesn't stop. The hunt doesn't vanish. The hunt doesn't forgive. It only remembers. You lived. That's the part no one will ever believe. When you stumble out of the forest, skin pale, eyes sunken, hands trembling from nights that refuse to end, the villagers won't ask where you've been. They'll see the ash clinging to your hair, the bone dust on your cloak, and they'll shut their doors. Survival isn't something you get to brag about. Not here. Not from this. Survival makes you dangerous. It makes you a reminder. And people fear reminders even more than monsters. So yes, you lived, but not entirely. You don't walk the same way anymore. Your steps carry the echo of hooves, and sometimes when you stop, the ground still vibrates under you, as if the hunt hasn't quite finished passing through. You try to laugh when someone tells a joke in the tavern, but the sound never comes out right. Too sharp, too hollow. People turn their heads when they hear it. They think you're mocking. You're not. It's just that your lungs have forgotten the rhythm of joy. You see shapes in the fog now. Not clear, not solid, but suggestions. And learn it. The glint of a helm, the arch of antlers, the sway of cloaks moving against a wind that isn't there. Sometimes they're behind you. Sometimes they're waiting at the bend of a road. Sometimes they linger in the corner of your room long after the candles have gone out. You don't chase them. You don't call out. You just bow your head, like the villagers do when thunder rolls without rain. And you leave coins on windowsills. You don't know why. Some part of you remembers the stories, offerings, bribes, small gestures to keep wandering spirits at bay. You never watch to see if the coins disappear. You only wake to find them tarnished overnight, edges worn smooth as if thumbed by someone who doesn't exist anymore. Still, you keep leaving them. It feels like the one bargain you have left. You try to tell yourself you're safe now, that the hunt is done with you, that what happened was a single crossing, a brush with something larger than life, larger than death. But then the wind howls, and you know better. You don't sleep when it starts. You can't. You lie awake, body stiff beneath your blanket, listening, always listening. Because sometimes the howl is just air through branches, and sometimes it's not. You know the difference. Your nights are longer now. Sleep comes in fragments, in minutes stolen from the edges of fear. When you dream, it isn't of faces or places you once loved. It's of riders dissolving through trees, of dogs with mouths full of smoke, of the horn's silence burrowing into your skull until your own thoughts fracture. You wake with your name half forgotten, clutching the stone in your pocket until you feel the weight of yourself return. You tell no one about this. No one would understand. Daylight doesn't cure it. Sun on your skin feels wrong, too hot, like it's burning away the thin veil you wear to pass as alive. People greet you in the market, and you force a smile. But your eyes drift to shadows, searching for movement where none should be. You hear whispers in the rustle of grain, in the drip of water from a roof. Sometimes you answer them before realizing you've spoken aloud. Children stare. Parents drag them away. You wonder, often, if you should have let yourself go when they passed through you. If surrender would have been easier than dragging this half-life behind you. You're not taken. Not yet. But you're not untouched either. You exist between, stitched by ash and silence. Every breath, a reminder that you didn't escape. You were marked and returned, like a letter that reached the wrong address. You're alive, but not entirely. And maybe that's the worst fate of all. The villagers can bury their dead, they can pray for their lost. But you walk among them, breathing, speaking, never fully present, never fully gone. You are a story with no end, a warning with legs. When children whisper of the hunt, they glance at you. When the hounds bark at empty fields, they glance at you. You are living proof that the wild hunt doesn't always kill. Sometimes it spares, but sparing is not saving. So when the wind howls at night, you don't close your eyes. You don't dare. You lie awake in the dark, listening, waiting, clutching your stone, whispering your name under your breath, because deep down you know the truth. The hunt didn't leave you behind. It's still riding, and it remembers where you sleep. The hunt didn't end with you. It never does. You thought maybe it had, for a while, when the forest grew quiet, when the dogs dissolved into mist, when the hooves faded into memory. You told yourself you had survived something final, an ordeal that closed itself behind you like a door. But the world doesn't work that way. The hunt isn't an event. It's a season. It doesn't stop. It only waits. And waiting is worse, because you can feel it, still, in the hush before storms, in the way birds scatter without warning, in the heavy pause between one church bell and the next. That same pressure building in the bones of the air, like time itself drawing a breath. You know what it means. The hunt is circling again. Not here, not yet, but somewhere. Somewhere a rider is tightening the girth of a saddle that smokes where it touches. Somewhere a hound is gnawing on a name it's been given, testing the sound before chasing it through the trees. Somewhere a horn rests against the lips of a man crowned with antlers, waiting for the moment to erase the world again. It won't be you this time. The hunt doesn't waste itself on old echoes, but that doesn't comfort you, because you know what comes next. Another forest, another outsider, Another fool who thinks a coin or a feather or a skull belongs in their pocket. Someone who breathes when they shouldn't. Someone who looks when they've been told to close their eyes. Someone who thinks survival is a matter of cleverness instead of chance. The hunt will find them. It always does. And maybe next time, they won't let anyone go. That's the part that keeps you awake at night, listening to the wind scratch at your windows like claws. The thought that what you lived through wasn't mercy at all. It was message. You were allowed to crawl back into the world just so the world would remember. A warning disguised as a body. Proof that the hunt is still riding, that the line between myth and memory hasn't been erased. No matter how many priests deny it, no matter how many books forget to mention it, the villagers know. They've always known. That's why their doors slam shut at sundown, why their candles gutter out without protest, why they leave bread on thresholds even if they won't admit why. That's why old women spit when the wind shifts, why children hum songs with no melody, why no one answers when you ask them what's wrong with the woods. They don't need to answer. You already know, because you've heard the horn. And if you ever hear it again, you know better now. Don't look back. The hunt rides behind you, not in front. To look is to recognize, and recognition is invitation. Don't run. Running makes you pray, and pray is what they came for. Just kneel, sink to the ground like the dead you're pretending to be, and pray, not for salvation, not for mercy, but for something far simpler. Pray you are not remembered, because memory is the true hunger of the hunt. It doesn't need your body, not really. Bodies rot, bones crumble, names fade. But remembrance lingers. Every scream, every stumble, every desperate breath is another verse in their endless litany. If they remember you, they'll come again. Maybe not in your lifetime, maybe not even in the lifetimes of your children. But the hunt has no shortage of nights and no shortage of riders. They have patience older than the soil. So when the horn blows and the world falls silent and the stars flicker like candles about to gutter out, make yourself small. Make yourself nothing. Do not shout your name to prove you still exist. Do not clutch at charms or relics as if faith alone can shield you. Do not dare to believe you're special enough to be spared twice. Kneel, close your eyes, bury yourself in silence, and hope the hunt passes over you like mist through branches. Because the truth is crueler than the stories. The hunt never ends. It waits, it circles, it chooses. And one day, when the wind tastes like iron and the trees creak like they're speaking your name, you'll know it's your turn again. They still ride,